Welcome to the Illuminating Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Marcia Narayan Weldon, and I'm a lawyer, business strategist, corporate trainer, and executive coach. Each week, I'm going to bring you my favorite entrepreneurs, thought leaders, legal professionals, and other coaches who will inspire, educate, and empower you. I'm super excited to have on my guest today, Vanessa Kuljis, who is a lawyer, a Gallup certified strengths coach, and an authenticity advocate. So she has a super long bio, but I'm going to put it in the show notes because I really want you to be impressed with her, as I am. She's a University of Chicago grad. We've also worked together, but now she spends her time coaching people and specifically using the Gallup Clifton strengths to help people understand where their true strengths are and how they should work toward them. So Vanessa, first of all, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, some people may have no idea what strengths are. They've heard about strengths, going to the gym, etc. But what does it mean when you talk about working to your strengths? And why do you use the Gallup Clifton strengths mechanism in the first place?
So I use this, first part of your question was, what are strengths? I think they're basically natural talents, right? The way that you're naturally wired to think, to feel, to behave. And I use the Clifton Strengths Assessment because sometimes we need a metric. Sometimes we need something in black and white to explain to us what these things are. We tend to walk around, with a set of talents that we don't realize is there because they're too obvious. We live with ourselves too much, right? It's like the nose on your face. We don't think we're exceptional because that's just how we do things. I call this a brilliance blind spot, right? And so when you have an assessment or a tool that you can use to really define what it is that does make you brilliant, that makes you exceptional, you start to see yourself with new eyes. And so the assessment will help draw out some of those talents, explain them, give them language, give them color, and then start to give you a new perspective on how you see yourself and what you can do with what naturally makes you talented.
So you have your natural talents, right? And I try to describe it to people, for example, imagine telling the greatest soccer player in the world right now, or football for everybody in the rest of the world, right? The greatest soccer player in the world. I need you to go play basketball. He's probably going to be better at other people than I would at playing basketball, but he's really good at playing soccer.
Yeah.
So what happens when somebody gets their assessment, you go through, they learn about their strengths and what they're really good at, but their job doesn't allow them to do that? And I'm sure that's come up with you where people say, this is why I'm miserable, because I'm supposed to be working with this, but I've got to do these other things. How do you actually deal with that on a day-to-day basis where someone may not have the chance to change what they do at work or how they appear at work based on their strengths profile because they're not running the show?
That's so hard in real life, because what happens is people that I work with, and a lot of us are exceptional at what we do. So it's really hard to first get through the barrier of, how can I be demotivated by something that I'm actually good at, or that other people tell me that I'm good at? You can have confidence in something, but not feel like it's your zone of genius, right? Like you can be excellent, but not feel a sense of flow because it's not really in your wheelhouse, right? So like you said, someone who plays soccer will start playing basketball and suddenly, they're better than most of us, but not as good as they can be. So it's really about first of all, getting a sense of validation. You're not crazy. You make sense. How you feel isn't weird. It's valid. And here's why. What are the real reasons why you don't feel motivated? And those are the same reasons that you might want to be able, or that you might be able to shift and do something else.
So how do you help somebody navigate from the, I hate this job, I hate this manager, I hate these people, to, I think I actually need a completely different career? Because sometimes it's hard for people to say, is it this company? Is it this firm? Is it these people? Or is it, this isn't what I'm meant to do? And I'm assuming that strengths and your coaching helps them with that. But how do you help them come to those decisions? Because I'm sure there's some people listening who don't know whether they have a job, a career, or a calling, and they're trying to figure out what to do with their lives.
I love how you just said that, a job, a career, or a calling. Yes, it is about distinguishing that, but it's first about distinguishing what it is that you actually feel. So I've had clients tell me, this is the first time that I'm admitting out loud that I don't like what I'm doing, that I don't like where I'm working, that I don't feel like my mentors, who are doing the best they can, not bad people, are not serving me. So step one is that getting to the place where you can acknowledge this is actually what's happening for me. Because it's really hard to admit that, right? People that are very motivated and exceptional, again, at what they do, have reached a certain level of accomplishment. If you say out loud that something is not working for you have to do something about it. And you tend to succeed at everything you do, right? So admitting that this is not working, this isn't what I need, this isn't what I want, is the first step. And again, explaining, giving some color as to why. Because
And I know you work, I'm
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no,
I know you work with a lot of lawyers or people who have invested a lot of money in their education. It's got to be really hard to tell somebody, I know you spent about $200,000 to get this education and 3 years of your life, and maybe you've been doing this for 5, 10 years. How do you get those people? And not everybody listening is going to be a lawyer, but they may have invested time, or they've got family expectations or their own personal expectations of, wait a minute, I've got this great job, I get paid well, but I'm still miserable. Who am I to complain? Does that ever happen to you with your clients? And how do you help people deal with that?
all the time. And that's that, maybe an internalized sense of gaslighting is what happens, right? Sometimes people tell you, and well intentioned, right? But you're so good at this. But you work so hard, but you've invested 200,000 plus in your education, and then all these years, generating this level of success. Why would you want to turn the ship around in the middle of an ocean? Well, so part of it is getting around this internal sense of invalidation. It takes a lot of unlearning to really start to hear your own voice over what you've been told, over what expectations are, and to also start implementing a plan that actually makes sense, that's not going to rock the boat completely, right?
Right.
You do need a realistic plan, right? You don't want to all of a sudden, if you don't have the capacity, right, just to quit without a plan, right? You're smart. You want to have a game plan. So the idea is to get you to first be really clear on how you feel, what it is that you are thinking about, and then explore the options. And the fact is, I don't know. I don't have the answers. You do, right? And it's a
Right.
matter of drawing that out. How is it that you're feeling? What is it that's missing? Do you want to experience what it is to be, let's say, you want to stay in law? If you're a lawyer who's thinking about shifting, do you want to stay in law and see what it would be like somewhere else? Are you done? Do you really want to move on? Okay, and if that's the case, then let's put all of your energy and effort into thinking about what else is possible. But you have to be really clear on how you feel, what it is that you want. And I love how you put it. What it a job, a career, or a calling?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need in your life? Are you a person who wants to have a calling that you're pursuing? Do you want to have a stable job so that you can spend the maximum amount of time traveling or writing,
Right.
or being with your family? Like what is success for you? And a lot of that is paired with how we're wired, what our strengths are, what we're good at. So the better that you get to know yourself, the better a springboard you have to really define what it is you want, and to explain to yourself and others how it is that you're feeling and why you're feeling that way.
Now, you also went through a transition, right? You've been a lawyer, you've worked at a university, you've worked at law firms. How was that journey for you? And how do you use your own experience when you're coaching other people who may be very afraid to say, I've always been known as this? I'm a lawyer, right? Because I know a lot of lawyers that say, this is all I am. This is who I am. And it could be a doctor, it could be anybody. This is what I am. And they make their career their identity. So you've had to go through that yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about how you navigated those waters?
That's a good, and I could give you so many versions of an answer. What I will say is the only place to connect with people from is from your experience. And I don't know everything. I haven't had every experience, but I do
Mhm.
know what it's like to invest so much in something and then feel like there's more, there's something else, right? Not that it was wrong, just that it was incomplete. It wasn't the whole story. And that's what I would say to people, right? That's what I work with folks on when we talk about what you might want next. Something that worked for you at a certain period in your life, and that you're excited that you have accomplished, right? Like you're proud of having done it. You needed to have done it for some reason. It might have been perfect then, and it's just not perfect now. So what's next? And that's how I've always approached it myself: is what's next. I don't have regrets about what I've done. I'm very proud of having done a lot of different things, and that's also how I'm wired. I don't know what I'm going to do in the next 10 years, and I hope I can't figure it out yet because I
Right.
want to be delighted and surprised at what I uncover within myself and what I create with other people. But that's also something that is me, and I had to understand that about myself. Um,
Right.
and so that's what I would say to other people is, what have you been wanting to do? What are you excited about? And that you're going to have some sense of, and I have certainly had a sense of fear, right? Like this is a big leap, even going from practicing as a lawyer to going to a nonprofit working with lawyers. It's different. When you leave practice, there's a big shift that happens, and yes, your identity gets wrapped up in that, sure. um, but you are not your job. You
Right.
are much more than that. And it's far more interesting to pursue the things that scare you a little bit because that's what makes for an interesting life and career. Why would you want to settle for anything less than that? So, what I would say and what I have said to other people that have asked me is it doesn't necessarily get easier making these decisions, deciding what to do next, picking your next adventure. It just gets more familiar. You become, I don't want to say comfortable. You become familiar with the feeling of I'm wanting to try something different and this feels like the next right thing. And it will be the
Right.
right thing until maybe you find something else.
Well, your company is called Bloom Rise, and you have a saying that when you bloom, we all rise. I'm assuming I got that right,
Yeah.
right? And you have a few pillars. I guess you might want to call it a framework in terms of how you help people bloom and rise. And speaking of, we just talked about fear, courage is one of them, right? And I try to tell people to do something scary every day, every week, every month, whatever that looks like for you, because that's how you build resilience, and that's how change becomes less scary. But courage is difficult for most people. So, how do you get people to get past their fears, the fear of changing their job, changing their life, changing who they've been wrapped up in for 10, 20, 30, 40 years as their identity?
I would first say it's not supposed to be easy breezy. It doesn't necessarily get easier. It gets more familiar. It and it's not about having some boost of courage that suddenly you're gonna do it and it's gonna be great. It doesn't necessarily feel that way. Sometimes what it feels like is a whisper. You have something that's just a little bit louder than your fear that's compelling you, and so you do the next thing, right?
Hmm.
You put in the job application. You ask somebody for feedback. You ask someone to mentor you. You just do the thing that's just a little bit scarier or a little bit louder than what feels scary, and and that will move you forward little by little. Like a lot of what you do doesn't have to be big, and it probably won't be. It's just saying yes when you mean yes, and asking and trying and putting yourself out there. It's a small thing, and but it feels enormous and it feels um, overwhelming when you're really really scared. And of course, there's reasons why. Our livelihoods. We think about our identities. We think about our families, and those are all valid too. And
Right.
what I would say to that also is don't do things alone. This is why you
Ah.
work with someone,
This is
or
why you get a coach.
this is why you get a coach, or have a trusted friend, a confidant, wherever you may be, right? A coach can 100% be that for you. This is why I do what I do because I've had plenty of coaching as well. And that will move
And
you forward when you're stuck in your head afraid.
so, what if you have somebody who says, I don't even think I really need a coach. First of all, I've got a therapist, and or I can get a consultant. Why a coach? When is it the right time for someone to get a coach? And is there ever a wrong time, or is there ever a time when coaching is not for somebody?
Ooh, so many good things in there. First, I never convince anyone to take on coaching because you got to feel like it's something you want to do, right? Or this isn't going to work. It's it's um, it's got to be something you want to do. A wrong time to take on coaching is if you're feeling unwell, right? If you are feeling like I am so burnt out, I can't even function very well right now, then you got to take care of you, right? Then that therapist is your go-to. Then take care of your health. I've seen all the things I always follow the things that you put on put up about meditation and mindfulness,
Mm.
work on doing some of those things. Like that's where you put your energy. But if you want to, if you're feeling like you're at a good place, as in you are healthy enough to think about moving forward. And by the way, you can always have a therapist at all times. Highly recommend.
Right.
But you're feeling healthy enough that you want to move forward. You're ready to make some moves, and you want that sense of accountability and um, not just accountability, but someone to help you think and see things differently. Because, like I said at the beginning, when you live with yourself and you are just too mired in, well, I'm not that exceptional. These are all the problems I have. This is how I see the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
really hard to start to think about what's possible for you. And a good coach will sit with you and say, this is what I see that's possible for you. Not because I'm making it up, but because here's a reflection of what you keep saying. Did you notice you said this 10 times? Did you notice you keep saying you dream about doing this? Did you notice that this isn't working for you? Right? And so that's a good time to get a coach when you're tired of listening to just yourself and you need accountability. And when you're really ready to make some steps to move forward, you're ready to have somebody hold you accountable, help bolster your courage, and someone to give you a sense of a greater belief. Sometimes you just need someone to borrow belief from.
I love it. I love it. And one of the things you also do is help people with authenticity. And I think in the age of social media, with everybody trying to be somebody that they're not, or trying to be the next influencer or the next, and, even among, 60-year-old people all over the internet, or just trying to be seen and heard, it's sometimes difficult to be your authentic self without fearing being judged. And I know you are an authenticity advocate. What does that mean? And how do you get people past that fear, which might be the biggest fear of all for some people, of being and showing who they truly are?
I don't remember where I heard this quote. I will have to find it and give credit. But it was something like, no one exceptional is universally liked. And that has given me so much courage because
Yeah.
it's true. There's so many ways to be exceptional, and not everyone will resonate. But the
Yeah.
but the people that will resonate with who you are the people that you need around you. And
Yeah.
there is the big difference between authenticity and between belonging and
Hmm.
and fitting in. And what we have oftentimes in our workplaces and in our lives is this sense of fitting in. Of I need to be this way. To do this job, I need to be this person. That's not me.
Mm.
And right? And we put on this kind of
Right.
disguise, and it's all well meaning, right? We're doing the best we can, but it feels like fitting in, and that is not the same thing as belonging. And so when
Right.
you are authentic, then you discover a sense of belonging where you can be you, right? Maybe the work environment you're in doesn't appreciate who you are, not because you're wrong, but because it's the wrong environment. It's like planting a rose in the desert. Sometimes you can't grow in sand. You've got to.
Love all the flower analogies, the bloom rise, the
Yeah.
growing the desert. But it's true. And that's a really great way to think about it because, you can be the best, but that environment isn't going to let you grow, isn't going to feed you, doesn't see your beauty. And I think that's very difficult for many people, and especially, depending on people listening to this episode, there are economic headwinds right now for many people, and people might say, I can't be my true self at work because if I am, this will happen. Any thoughts for that when people might say, something, I'm just going to keep my head down because there's too much stuff going on and who I am is too much, or I've been told I'm too loud or too opinionated. I'm sure you deal with some people like that. And what's the advice that you give them, especially when they may say, nah, it's not really the time to me be authentic?
Yeah, this could be like a whole other conversation. I love this question. Um, I don't know if I'm going to do it justice, but I think you have to know your people. You have to know what feels right. And sometimes if I think this is what I want to say first. If you're in a toxic work environment and things are unhealthy for a certain number of reasons, then you need to find a way out, right? If you really can't be yourself, you really can't just be a person, and you're not appreciated or you're taken down in some particular way, then you've got to see your way out of that.
But
But
you've used it, you've an expression, and I hate to cut you off, but I want to make sure we're on the same page with the definition, because everybody says they're in a toxic environment right now. I think toxic has become a word that's overused. So let's make sure we really have, what is your definition of a toxic environment?
let's think about that one. My definition of a toxic environment, um,
And toxic is in the eye of the beholder, obviously, right?
it is. I hesitate to give it like a particular definition. I feel like I'd have to think about this, but
Hmm.
some place where there's gaslighting,
Hmm.
where feedback is unclear,
Hmm.
where for some for some reason it's not safe to be yourself.
Right.
Right? There's undermining. There's discrimination. There is bad mouthing, gaslighting. If you are mired in a workplace like that,
Right.
then sometimes it really is not safe.
Hmm.
And I want to say that because I hear it so often
Right.
that I don't want to pretend like it doesn't exist. It does.
Absolutely.
And if that's the environment you're in, then no discussion about authenticity is going to fix that, right? Then the most authentic thing you can do is find support, whether it's a therapist, a coach, a community, and find a way to
Hmm.
get out as fast as you can. Because I have never heard someone who's been in a toxic work environment say, I wish I had stayed longer. And I
Right.
realize that that's not easy to do if you have a family to feed and things to do, right? Like
Hmm.
I want to acknowledge that because it happens so often, and I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish about talking about authenticity. But then I will say that there is a place where you can be yourself, and where like real healing happens there is beginning to believe again that there is going to be somewhere where you will belong, where you will be appreciated. It does exist. It is worth going after. And what
Right.
happens when people are burned out and mired in toxicity is you forget that that exists, and you feel like it will never happen for you again. It will.
Absolutely.
And that's the reminder that I want to offer, is that you're not wrong. You're not crazy. Let me validate what's been happening. I've been there too, right?
Right.
A lot of people have been there. And there is something better. Let's start to recover by seeing who you are in a positive light, in a new way.
I love that. I really do. And I think it's important that you help people understand that there's sometimes when you just can't stay no matter what. And there's sometimes when you just have to work your way through it, but have a supportive system.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate your giving your definition of what a is, because for some people, they've been living in it and so long. It's like everybody doesn't deal with this stuff. It's because they forget. It's almost like when you're in a dark movie theater and you walk outside in the light, like,
Yeah.
oh. And sometimes, we see it that people will sit there in the same, whether it's a toxic relationship or a toxic workplace. And for many people, they spend more time at work than they do at home,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes a situation that becomes untenable. But let's go to the positive. I want you to imagine that you won the lottery, right? And money was no object.
Okay.
You couldn't coach, you couldn't be a lawyer, but you still wanted to do something.
Hmm.
What would you do?
Oh, this is sneaky, Marcia, but I like your question. Um,
It's a question I, by the way, always ask people when I'm interviewing for them for a job too, because you
really?
can get so much insight from it. Oh yeah, for
Oh my
sure. I
goodness.
always want to know.
No pressure. Okay, what would I do professionally or for
Yes,
fun or both?
because I think we'd all be like, I'm on a yacht in Ibiza with people popping grapes in my mouth. That's not a hard question. Professionally, you have to do something professionally, because knowing you, being home doing nothing
Never gonna
would not be enough.
no.
Right.
Okay. What would I do? Ooh. I so a friend of mine, a fellow coach, has just released a podcast episode on voice acting. I've always thought that was fascinating.
And you have the voice for it too.
Thank
You do. Your voice is very soothing and it's calm, and you have like a lovely little laugh. Like you could be, don't take this the wrong way, like a Disney cartoon princess.
I love
Because
being fabulous.
or queen. Let's call it the queen, right? Just because,
Empress.
just like a very regal but very calming sounding voice. Hey,
I've
you can
always,
add it.
yeah, okay, I'm going to add that to my list. Thank you for that. This sounds fabulous. I've always thought that was, it's just cool, right? You get to collaborate. Like if you're a cartoon, then you have to be the cartoon. I don't know. I find this fabulous. Um, it just sounds like such a fun life to create with other people. Um, Something about the voice and the way that you present. Maybe that's why I became a litigator initially. I just thought
Hmm.
that would be
Yeah.
just the presentation piece of it. I think a lot of people that become litigators somehow have a background in theater. I do not, but I just find this
I took 4 years of acting lessons, so yeah, that's why
I
doing the
didn't know
litigator
that.
was, yeah. There you go.
That's
That's
very
why I can.
cool.
That's why I can argue any point. I can't sing though. That's why I'm not famous. But yeah, I took. So
The
that's why I
voice
can
has
memorize anything and that kind of stuff.
the
Yeah.
voice has many forms. It doesn't have to be singing. It can
Yeah.
be
So,
talking
but
to the
I
audience.
never got to be Dorothy. I had to be the Wicked Witch and the Wizard of Oz, and I'm still salty about it.
The
So
Wicked Witch was really cool though.
yeah, she was. She had a great monologue. So,
That's why Wicked
so now,
Wicked on Broadway.
so you've on the high note, you're going to be the Disney princess, queen, voiceover actress. And I want to inspire our guests in another way. What's a book or a work of art or a song or a movie that has had the biggest impact on your life and why? They're the hard questions for the end.
One.
Or
Um,
could pick a couple.
okay. Uh, One that I read for the first time last year, even though the 10th anniversary of the book had just come out, is actually Cheryl Strayed's Dear Sugar book, which is called Tiny
Mm,
Beautiful Things. So it's becoming a Hulu series right now, and I can't wait to watch it. But she's essentially a coach on paper, but it's so artfully written. It's just advice and art melded into one,
mm,
and it's not
mm,
just what she says; it's how she says it. She is masterful at bringing out what people wrote into her. So basically, it's an advice column. People write in with their
mm,
questions and
mm,
issues, and she responds, and usually with a beautiful story. Um,
mm.
she responds with some advice about what they might do. Um,
Right.
but she has a really amazing way of drawing out things that they have written in their letter that give them clues to what they really think. So again, mirroring back what you might already know. And
Yeah.
the way she writes is just beautiful. Most people know her for writing Wild, which was
Right.
acted by Reese
Hmm.
Witherspoon
Right.
in Hollywood. But I actually love this book even more, and there's so
Right.
much wisdom in there. It's a beautiful read. I read a lot of it in the middle of the night randomly when I couldn't sleep, and I
Hmm.
highly recommend it. I would say that has been life changing. I've reread some of those stories over and over because you just see
Really.
yourself in them. Yeah,
So repeat the book again, and we'll provide a link to it in the show notes.
it's called Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed, and the
Excellent.
10th anniversary just came out. I'm just going to stick with that one. It feels
Okay.
like a good one for the moment.
Great. So we talked about strengths and superpowers. What's your superpower? And how do you, because everybody's like, what's your superpower? And sometimes it takes a while to think about it. What's your superpower and how did you know? And I'm sure everybody has a superpower. So if you wanted to help people figure out what their superpower is, how would you help them figure that out?
I like to look at it as a collection of superpowers. I think we all have a bundle that works in a particular way for us. So for me, I think I love people. I love studying
Mhm.
people, understanding, finding connections. I'm fascinated by how we think and work and live, and I think that is a superpower. I think it's why I became a coach, right? Because I genuinely like
And
people,
why you excel at it.
and why yeah,
Because it's clear that you
I
care
want to
and that you
be a
love
professional
people.
coach. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think another one is being open to possibilities. I didn't always think that was a superpower, right? Because the things you get told when you're younger, right? You have too many things, too many options. You like too much variety. Just pick one thing. And I'm like, oh, but one thing for different eras of my life. That's
Right.
what I want to do. But I realize now that's what gives me life. You don't just want a better job, you want a better life. You want more life
Yeah.
in your life. And I feel like I'm always thinking about that. I'm present with what's possible all the time. And at my best, I think I can draw that out for the people around me. And I'm most proud of doing that for my family, right? When we
Oh,
just adventure and travel and at home when I'm at my
right.
best. I think that's what I bring to the people I love. So that being present
Wonderful.
for possibilities in life.
Okay. So, what is the biggest takeaway or action item that you'd like people to know? On this podcast, I want every guest to leave the audience members with something they can do right away or something they can think about. So, whether it's that book recommendation that you had, whether it's a way to think of themselves as a superpower, but from you, from Bloom Rise, what do you want people to take away from this conversation, if nothing else?
I would leave you with a question, which is how is being more yourself generous? We think that somehow authenticity
Hmm.
is self serving. This is what I want, but I'm supposed to, or I should, or I can't. But no, how is it generous? You mentioned it before. You got it exactly right. When you bloom, we all rise. When you are your best version of yourself, how do you make other people better? How do you bring
Mm.
light to people around you? How are you a good mentor? How are you contributing to the world? So the question I leave you is this: what about being your most authentic best self is generous?
I love that. That's going to really make me think. I feel like that's my next journal prompt for tonight.
Number
And
one.
Vanessa, how can people work with you if they'd like to work with you? Of course, we'll put your links to everything in the show notes, but just for people who are driving into work and saying, I've got to look this woman up. First of all, let's make sure you spell your last name for everybody. And so they can look you up that way, and tell us how they can work with you.
Sure. Last name is Kuljis. You can look me up online at bloomriseco.com. And I work with folks individually and I also work with groups. So, groups could be if you are a coach and you want to bring the strengths assessment to the group of people that you work with. I love working with my fellow coaches and I also love partnering with businesses, law firms, small businesses to bring coaching to a group, and small groups are my jam. I also do bigger presentations, but I love getting in with small groups and really helping you see each other in a more
Okay.
exciting, authentic way.
And let's close out with, do you have a mantra or a saying or something that you use to empower yourself on a daily basis that you can inspire people with?
This one was born out of a lot of thought around career changing. So I will leave you with
Mm-hmm.
this one, which is let your yes be yes and your no be no.
I love it. And we can't improve on that. Let your yes be yes and let your no be no. Vanessa Kuljis from Blue Rise Co. Thank you so much for joining us. And stay tuned for our next episode. And again, if you want to work with Vanessa, please check the show notes. You can get links to all of the ways to contact her. Thank you.
Thank you. I loved being here with you.
Thanks so much for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode. If you like what you heard, subscribe and share it with others.